Welcome back. It's time for the Capitol Report with CapitolBeatOK.com's Pat McGuigan. And Pat, of course, we saw the primary election this past week. It seems that not too many people got out and voted or paid a whole lot of attention. And we know that Oklahoma is one of the, if not the most red state in the country. Is it possible that Republicans, Democrats, maybe independents have lost interest?
You know, it's an interesting theory, and it'll take time to play that out. I will say this, the turnout was marginally, very small fraction higher among Republicans than it was 4 years ago, the closest analogy, a presidential year but a legislative primary race. That's actually kind of surprising given the shift to an entire, 4 to 6 weeks earlier for all these elections. So that's actually kind of interesting. 19.6%, and that compared to 17.2% turnout among Republicans. Of course, Democratic turnout was very low, and I don't have those numbers, and I'm not sure they're easy to track because there was not a statewide race as a peg. But then in the non-presidential year of 2010, Republicans had 30% turnout, and Democrats had 26% turnout at this stage of the election cycle in the competitive elections for the statewide races. So, low turnout, yes, absolutely. 1 out of 5 voters in the dominant party, that's low. So that's inarguable. That's really that's the picture there. Not quite as glum as we thought, because we were both watching the results and they got locked up for a while. We had results by about midnight that were pretty clear, but for 2 hours on election night, we were unable to get a clear picture of what was emerging.
Well, in looking at the results, were there any, in your eyes, surprises from the primary?
Jim Bridenstine winning the election in the First District in Tulsa was a real upset. And the reason it was an upset is not Bridenstine, who is a articulate, attractive candidate. The real surprise is that a strong conservative would be turned out by the voters of Tulsa. And the speculation, the reflection, the comment on it is that Bridenstine worked really hard and that people were looking for James Langford type enthusiasm, rather than Sullivan style, which was a good soldier, for the Republican majority. And of course there were some personal issues, but he was a dutiful, hard-working congressman, and he got turned out by a young man who's a Naval Reserve pilot, can put 4 or 5 sentences together very effectively, and can address issues substantively, and ran a good campaign. Big surprise. The seemingly weak showing of the Tea Party is not necessarily a surprise, it's just a fact. They won in that race, and they won in one legislative race. And of course, it's important to remember that Bridenstine has made the point that he's not necessarily a total Tea Party acolyte, but he was certainly an ally. So their comparatively weak showing was of interest to me. And finally, bring it home here to the city, House District 88, a Democratic primary, very competitive. I have to confess, I had handicapped it for Mike Dover and Steve Cortez to finish first and second. Kay Floyd just surged and almost won the nomination outright, so she'll be facing Dover in the runoff on August 28th. Very competitive race with Matt Harney, who finished third, getting a very impressive percentage of the vote. So Floyd's running first was one of the big surprises of the day for me.
All right, in the minute we have left, look into the crystal ball and talk about the general election climate here in Oklahoma.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the impact of the federal health care ruling is. A very mixed bag. On the one hand, upholding the individual mandate, but decimating the Medicaid requirements, which is actually financially maybe good news for Oklahoma. It might make things tough on a lot of people of modest means. The good hidden thing in that is the survival of Insure Oklahoma, which many of the politicians on the ballot in November helped form and support, both Democrat and Republican. So let's set that aside. The state will continue to show a strong conservative influence, not only in the Republican Party, but in places like the 2nd District race, where the 2 that are still left for the runoff, the nominee is going to be a conservative Democrat in the Dan Boren mode. Republican gains already, 2 in the Senate already. There may be more. And then finally, money matters. If you really want to sum up the story of the Tea Party losses, Money matters, but don't count the Tea Party philosophy out. It's still the core of the Republican philosophy on the size of government spending and taxation.
All right. Well, you can read more about these and other topics at CapitolBeatOK.com. For Pat McGuigan, I'm Alex Cameron. Have a great Saturday.